All right, without further ado, I want to introduce myself as Rodnisha Joy, also known as Joyride in the City. I want to thank Friend for having me. This is the first time I have publicly spoken out about things that I have went through in my life. The first obstacle, I was like, should I write notes and try to figure out what I'm going to say to you guys? But I figured, no, it'll just come to me naturally. So I want to first start off with my upbringing. Shout out to my mama. Y'all know her as Mama Joy, but I know her as Sheila. She eventually is going to be going to a nursing home, her and my dad, what things already preparing herself for. But one of the things with my mom, she always hustled. She always worked. We never wanted for anything. She always made sure she kept a roof over our head. My little sister and I made a commitment that we didn't want to be teenage parents, so we saved ourselves until we either graduated high school or got married. We wanted to like break the generational curse. Like we didn't want our parents to have to take care of kids in school. So July the 7th, 2001, my mother, well way before July the 7th, 2001, I want to say it was probably around August of 99 or something like that. My little brother was 1 year old. My mom was in a bad car accident which caused her to not be able to walk. She had a nurse to take care of her. So I had to take care of the younger siblings. During that time, she needed me to make a run to the store for her. And along that journey, again, that was like July 7th, 2001. I went to the store, completed that mission for her. Leaving the corner store, I'll never forget, I was listening to Gangsta Boo, and a vehicle went past me. And when that vehicle went past me, I began to see it flip numerous times. When that vehicle began to start flipping, it seemed like the world stopped. When the world stopped, the first thought to my mind was, I want my mom and dad. But my dad was too far, but I knew my mom was close by. So I drove home. I blocked out everything that I had seen, went straight to my mom. When I got to the house, my little brother, he was about 1, and he was like, ooh, you wrecked the truck. And I'm looking at him like, boy, shut up, let's go in the house. Like I grabbed him and taken him in the house. But my mom comes outside, and she said, what happened? I said, somebody hit me and kept going. Because in my mind, that's what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to hit me and keep going. So her being in her wheelchair, she was like, come on, we're going to go back up there. So we went back to the accident scene, and when we got there, it was plenty of people, plenty of traffic, plenty of police cars. And at that moment, I felt like I was going to die because my mom was going to kill me because I had killed somebody and I didn't tell her what had happened. So the police came and they blocked us in. It was like, you know, get out the vehicle. And she was like, hey, she was just nervous. So they allowed her to drive me back to the scene. And when they drove me back to the scene, I seen the condition of the vehicle that I had hit. And I was just like, oh my goodness, they're dead. Luckily, the person was not dead. He was sitting on the sidewalk, and they were like, that's the person that you hit. So I instantly started crying like, oh my goodness, I was feeling like I was in so much trouble. Let's keep in mind that I still was young, never really gave anyone a chance to date me because I was a fighter. I didn't want to date anybody because if they cheated on me, I feel like I was going to have to beat them up. So I just kind of stayed to myself. So with this particular person, 3 days went by, I was still going through the motions of I almost killed a person. I received a phone call like a week after the accident, and it was the young man that I hit. And I ran to my mom. I was like, Mom, he calling. What should I do? And she was like, bring me the phone. And I'm like, okay. So I picked up the phone and I talked to him. And we began to talking, but he didn't talk about the accident. He was just asking me how I was doing, et cetera, et cetera. few years past, he became my husband. Don't start clapping yet. Okay, I'm divorced. Okay, let's calm down. But don't start clapping yet. We divorced. Okay, so we end up getting married, and during that time, one of the things I always realize is find out a person's background from their childhood, what they've been through. Now, when we first started talking, everything was fine to me, because if you want to fight, I want to fight too. I'm with it. I'm with the fight. I'm 19. Let's fight. That's what I'm good with. I can fight. So we had a domestic violence relationship, but I was fine with it because I was fine with fighting. By the time I turned 21, we went through like marriage counseling with the church because he was very church involved. So at some point the pastor was like, hey, he ain't gonna change, divorce him. But it had to be a secret because of the reputation in the church, you know. That's one of the things that hurts a lot of people, is because the church folks. So with the pastor saying, hey, you're gonna need to divorce him, because I would show up in church with a black guy and put makeup on, and people don't wear makeup, so it was already a disconnect. But I just pressed forward. So I didn't want to listen to the pastor. We end up moving to Nashville just to kind of like change, everything's gonna be better. So nothing changed. We just moved to Nashville, and I ended up being able to make more money. So we were able to make over $160,000 a year, and nobody ever knew. My mama never bragged about, she is the reason that I was able to make that $100,000 plus a year, because she invested into her daughter, you know? So I appreciate your mom for that. So by the time I turned 23, I was laying on the kitchen floor, and I was like, if I had a child, I wouldn't want my child to see this type of behavior. So I stopped fighting him. And when I stopped fighting him, it would be times where he would just be over me and still punching me in the face or whatever. I would always have bruises. So he learns how to do body shots, so that way my face wouldn't be messed up. And at some point, my mom was like, you just gotta start fighting back. And I'm like, no, I don't wanna fight back. I felt like I had become weak to the point of, maybe if I don't fight back, he'll stop. That didn't change. A few years had passed, but before all the midst of this, I felt like I wanted to do whatever I could to make my husband happy. So I'm like, what do you like to do? Because I know he was like very experienced compared to me. So we began having threesomes. So in my head, I felt like if other people were brought into our home, that one, we're gonna save some money. Two, I'm not gonna have the embarrassment of some woman saying, hey, I'm sleeping with your husband, because baby, you gotta come to me too. But that still didn't make him love me. So I asked him one day, I'm like, why do you marry me? And he was like, because you was a virgin. And I was like, oh, okay. That made sense to me, you know? It's like he didn't have to worry about people saying that I was in the streets, because nobody had ever had me. So eventually I got tired of the fighting and I left. But before I left, no, I came to Memphis with nothing. I left him with everything. I just came with the clothes on my back. He backed me back. That was like in 2014, I came back to Memphis. So I forgot to tell y'all, we got married like 2 years after. So July the 12th, 2003 is when we got married. Really? Yeah, so we had ended up getting married. So we had been together, married and everything. And so 2014, when I came back to Memphis, I was just on some, I'm gonna get myself together. And he was like, no, we gonna fix this. I didn't know that he had started dating one of my friends. And she had been telling him random stuff. So I went back. I'm at home sleeping. I had received a phone call from one of the other young ladies that he was dealing with. And women, y'all know how we can be. We like, I was at my friend's house and her boyfriend was there. And I'm like, hey, act like you my husband and see what she gonna say. So I gave him the phone to pretend he was my husband, and he was just talking to her. And I'm like, oh, you gotta know, in my head now, I'm like, okay, not only are you dating my friend, but you're also dating another woman. So at that point, I just went back home and waiting on him to get home, but he never came back home. And later, it probably been about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when he came home. I really don't know what time it was. When he came home, we used to have like a lamp. Walmart used to sell it. When you step on it, the light clicks, and that's how you know the light is coming on. I was sleeping, and I heard the click of the light. And when I heard the click of the light, I got punched in the face. So while I'm sleeping, he just started attacking me. And I had a BB gun. He took the BB gun and he started shooting with the BB gun. And once he started shooting with the BB gun, he like put me up against the wall and he was like choking me. And I remember that when he began choking me, it was like I was passing out. I just was gasping for breath. And that lasted probably about 15 minutes. And when he got done, he left out of the bedroom. I laid on the bed. And he went and got on the couch and got on Facebook. And I'm like, okay, it's done. It was something that I had got used to. Like, once he calmed down, it's going to be okay. So I used to ask his mom, like, we used to have like little meetings at the house, and they were like, oh, well, you must be doing something to him to make him act like that. So I was like, okay. But it was like at that moment, when the police came, the ambulance, they come to check me out because the neighbors had actually called the police. One of the EMTs was like, you don't deserve it. I'm like, I'm used to it. Like, it's good. I'm going to be okay. And so he was like, but you don't have to be used to it. And I was like, okay, whatever. But at that point, I realized when I started seeing the more bruising on my arms and my face, I'm like, I don't deserve it. I still have like one of the incidents where he took our photo album and he hit me in my face with it. I have cuts in my face where it would never go away because I was hit that hard, and we were actually with his family, and nobody ever said anything about it because we were in the church. Nobody wanted to talk about that type of stuff in the church. And that's when I realized, like, the pastor came over and I felt like she had been manipulated by him first, and she was like, well, why did you call the police? And I'm looking at her like, you're a woman. Look at me. Why wouldn't I call the police? If we're not going to fix it, then it's time for me to leave. And I felt like instead of me being a victim, I had been the reason, like everybody was making me feel like it was something that I was doing to make him treat me that way because he didn't treat nobody else that way. So at that point, I decided to get on the megabus and come back home permanently. On my way back home, trying to hurry up and get away from him, I hit a man. And when I hit him, like he was walking across the street, and I know I only had a few minutes to get on the bus. And when I hit him, I had one of my friends with me, and she was like, oh my God, you almost killed somebody trying to get away. That means you never need to come back. Because now I went to jail behind hitting this man. Luckily, he was okay, he survived. But at that moment, it was like, because I'm trying to get a better life for myself, I almost cost somebody else their life. So once the guy heard my story and seen like, hey, I'm a recent wife, I'm trying to get away from my husband, I apologize for hitting you. Him and his wife and the people that were with him, they didn't press any charges on me. So I don't have it on my background.